self. So here's a little Untold Stories Beyond the Binary exclusive. Alrighty. Demi, thank you so much again for joining us on Untold Stories Beyond the Binary podcast, all about non-binary visibility. And I have to say, when we were producing our very first episode a couple weeks ago, and that's when you dropped your news for the world. So that's kind of where I want to start. I'd love to know just like how it felt and how it feels in this moment to be non-binary and to be able to like say that publicly to the world.
You know, it's been really freeing and liberating, and it's been something that I have kind of been holding on to for about a year and a half, and just wanting to really learn more, make sure that it felt right with me before I shared it with the world. And, you know, once I found that courage to be open with everyone, it's been an interesting journey. You know, it feels, like I said, really liberating, and I just feel more like myself. So I feel great.
On your podcast, the first episode of your podcast, you spoke with Alok, who's also been part of this show, about kind of coming into finding like non-binary as a term and then how it resonated with you. I'd love to hear you describe that moment of when you first discovered non-binary to be the right language for you. How did that come about?
Yes. So when I was in the studio working with Sam Smith on a song that we had together called I'm Ready, we were talking, and they had just come out as non-binary. And so I was talking to them about that and asking questions, learning a little bit. And they said, you know, why don't you come to this poetry show where my friend is speaking, and they will, you know, they'll inform you on what it is, and you'll get an insight into their experience. And I was like, cool, I'm totally down. So we ended up going to this poetry show, and oh my gosh, it just resonated so much with me that I was laughing, I was tearing up. Like it just was an emotional roller coaster ride. And it was because it resonated so much with me. And when I went up to Alok after the show, I remember saying to them, does being non-binary just mean that you are healed? And to them, they said, yes, oh my gosh, you get it. Now, to somebody that isn't non-binary, or, you know, I'm not saying that if you aren't non-binary, you're not healed, but basically what I meant, for me and my personal journey, I have so much trauma around gender identification, you know, stereotypes being placed on me, gender norms, all of that, like growing up. And so in that moment, I felt like, oh, all of my traumas, all of my fears, they're healed, and I can just fully accept who I am. And they said, oh, you get it. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful moment. I realized that was just the beginning. I'm just now, I waited my whole life to kind of figure this out about myself, but it's just the beginning.
Mm-hmm. I that resonates so much with me, because I feel like as non-binary people, when we are able to accept ourselves in the complexity, right, that is our identities, it allows us to be free from various other people's expectations, and it allows us to, at least for me in my experience, access a sort of freedom and a sort of joy that I did not know existed before. I'd love to hear from you, like, what gives you the most joy as you are going through, you know, your lived experience as a non-binary person?
What gives me the most joy is having the fluidity and the freedom to decide every day what I want to wear and how I want to present myself to the world. Some days I'm feeling more feminine. Some days I'm feeling more masculine. And, you know, unlike when I was identifying as female before, I felt like that kind of boxed me into how I acted, to how I, you know, not only just how I dressed, but even certain ways that I would take on the female role in relationships. You know, now it's like, I've shed all of that, and I get to wake up at the beginning of the day and decide, what do I want to present myself as today? And that's been the freedom and the most fun thing about this journey for me, is that I've realized fluidity for me is something that is just here to stay.
I have to ask, did you have any like nervousness or any trepidation about, coming, I hate the term coming out, but coming out to the world as a non-binary person, shifting and changing your pronouns?
That's why I say it's been an interesting journey. When I was getting ready to make this announcement, I was really, really excited and just wanting to share my truth with the world. And I had some people around me say, hey, this may not be received that well because it's still a new term. People are still trying to understand it. And I thought, yeah, whatever. And then I realized that it actually takes more of a toll on, it took more of a toll on me than I thought it would because I don't care what other people think. I thought that it wouldn't bother me, but there is something inside of you where you realize whether it's family members, distant family members, obviously not immediate family, but that's not obvious for a lot of people. But for me, distant family members or certain friends or whatever, just not being supportive or making fun of you, or kind of like, even to a certain degree, some people have kind of just not wanted to acknowledge that I'm a part of their family anymore. And that's really hurtful. And I didn't expect that to happen. And once it did, I was just kind of like, oh, this is the not fun part of finding yourself. And it's okay, because the people that are in my life and accept me for who I am today, those are the people I want to surround myself with, not the ones who aren't going to accept me unless I fit into a binary that they are used to so that they can comprehend me. That's not who I am anymore.
I remember when I first came out, it was a lot. Let's put it that way.
Right.
But I think what I'm hearing from you is that freedom and that security and that joy and that community that is on the other side, does make kind of those less savory parts of coming out a little bit more tolerable, right? While we shed some people, some family members, some friends, we gain, a whole community. I feel, at least. I've loved that about my own personal experience. I wanted to ask, what made you decide to, one, do a podcast, and then two, have your very first episode be this declaration?
Yes. Well, I wanted to continue the conversations I was having with friends, colleagues, whatever it was. I showed in my documentary how much I had learned from working on myself. And I thought, what better way to continue that process than to start a podcast where I'm having conversations with people that are meaningful, that people can learn from. So I started the podcast, and I just knew that my first episode of the podcast, I knew that I wanted it to be about this because I don't know, I had a date in mind that I wanted to announce this. And so I just kind of made it work with that date, and it all worked out.
My last question for you is, I kind of just want to know what you feel like you are learning about, how freeing yourself from others' expectations benefits you on a personal level, as well as like how you interact with society at large. What have you been learning throughout this process of unfolding to the world?
I think that what I've learned through this process is you just have to find out what works for you and not worry about what other people think, even if they are distant family members, because it's like, at the end of the day, you're not living your life for anybody but yourself. Or you shouldn't be living your life for anybody but yourself. And it's about finding the truth that works best for you in this life. And I don't know, allowing yourself to live being you. So that's I guess what I've learned is that I guess I already knew not to care what people thought, but it just took it to another level.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. So anything else I didn't ask you that you want to say about your non-binary fabulous self?
Oh, you are so sweet. Thank you. No, I do want to say thank you to the people that have been supported, because the support means so incredibly much to me. And even getting to notice my fans or friends or coworkers starting to use my new pronouns has been like really meaningful and special to me. So, just, I guess the last thing I would say is just a big thank you.
I love that. Well, thank you for joining us, Demi. I really appreciate it. Wishing you all fabulous non-binary success and all of that other stuff that people are
Thank
supposed
you.
to say. No problem.
You too. Happy Pride.
And there it is, beautiful people. We've come to the end